Here we are, everybody. It is the day after Thanksgiving. If you celebrate that, I know I did, and it was quite the day. I worked early. I went out, did a lot of driving, did some eating, did a lot more driving, and now I'm back. And it's a beautiful day out. It's Friday. We all love Friday, and we know what Friday brings to all of you. And what it brings to me is the necessity to get up here on my 4K camera and explain what's happening more or less in the world of video gaming. And if you ask, well, how come it's always about Nintendo or it's always based around Nintendo? It's because Nintendo is the only gaming company that's worth talking about. The other ones are more or less gone outside third parties and whatever. But I want to take you back. Let's start off by going back all the way back to April of this year. Now, sorry, but in the beginning of April of 2025, which feels like a completely different universe at this point, it was so long ago, though it feels like it was so long ago. When you get old, time slows down for you because you get bored a lot easier. But way back then, Nintendo decided to show everybody, reveal their Switch 2 that they kind of teased 2 months earlier. And with it came some announcements of games that people pretty much figured, well, if you're going 4K graphics and all that stuff, you're more than likely going to have. I mean, Capcom is always pretty much just used a Nintendo console to showcase themselves and everything and what they do with their games. So you knew Street Fighter 6 was coming around. Witcher 3 was on the Switch 1, which apparently was a, what do you call it? PlayStation 3. Yeah, that's what it was. And it had all the DLC and everything like that right out of the box. So you kind of figured Cyberpunk would be coming along. You were wondering whether or not Witcher 4 was coming out on the Switch 2, and it most likely is. And there may have been other titles, including Elden Ring, which I had announced in a video earlier was coming out and whatever. But then something happened. Something that I don't know if I live streamed it. I may have. I got to go back and look. But when they first demonstrated it, initially I saw the humanoid models and thought, that looks like a From Software game. But I didn't really know whether or not it was going to be a From Software game. Now, I always felt that From Software would have had some real tight connections to Nintendo because of the fact that it is a Japanese company, and Nintendo is probably the biggest company, at least in entertainment, in Japan. And the director of all the more popular or more well-known From Software games, Demon's Souls, Dark Souls 1, 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring, Miyazaki had already said in an interview that the greatest game he ever played was The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and he wanted to emulate that. Now, if you look at his games, they are very much like that Zelda game or Zelda games in general. First off, the 3D third-person type perspective. Typically, they take place in traditional fantasy lands, and there is no real storytelling outside the main storyline. It's more obscured by the architecture in the buildings and the surroundings that you go through. So, like, for instance, the temples or the dungeons in Ocarina of Time, they more or less give you the details if you're willing to look down to the finer pinpointed pixels of what these temples, what Hyrule from years before had really looked like, what they were trying to represent. When you play a From Software game, you don't really hear anything other than what seems to be just, I don't want to say mindless ramblings, or at least just random things said from non-playable characters. But there's always some digging that you have to do, and it comes down to you reading the descriptions of materials you pick up, as well as looking at the architecture. And there aren't really puzzles involved in fighting enemies or especially bosses in any From Software Miyazaki game, but there still are the the two phases and all this other stuff. That was more or less, I'm not going to say it didn't begin with Zelda games in general or specifically, but that was one of the things they did. Different stages of one battle. So you can tell that there's a lot of inspiration here in these games that Miyazaki had directed. And I just figured that sooner or later, either all the From Software games were going to come onto the Switch 1, Switch 2, whatever, or there would even be some kind of direct link. So when it was announced that the Nintendo Switch 2 was going to get its own exclusive from Software, I was blown away. And the idea of how it was going to change or how it would differ from what we're used to when it comes to Elden Ring, as I said, at least with the Erdtree DLC is coming out on the Switch 2. When? We have no idea, but it's coming out. And I have mentioned before that I always figured the delay was because From Software was working more directly with Nintendo, and Nintendo don't play bullshit releases for the most part, especially ones as big as Elden Ring. But I just kind of glanced over some news today that puts other things into play here that, if true, might go as far as what I said could be happening. Apparently, Bandai Namco has been bought out by Nintendo. I don't know if that's 100% accurate. I don't know if it's something in the works, but Bandai Namco is the distributor of From Software games. They're the developers, and Bandai Namco distributes their games. Now, of course, Bandai Namco has other series that you've heard of. Pac-Man, I'm not sure if you've heard of those, whatever. But From Software is really the one that, I don't want to say kept them alive, but has made them one of the top Japanese, at least, companies out. They have a whole bunch of other ones. They have those From Software-like games, like Code Vein and whatever. But for the most part, Bandai Namco has been pretty open for everybody. And now suddenly, that doesn't seem to be the case. And with this exclusive, that really doesn't seem to be the case with From Software, because whether or not Bandai Namco owns From Software, and they don't, Bandai Namco distributes. It's like Atlas and Sega. You typically don't get an Atlas game unless Sega is distributing it or whatever. So it's that kind of idea. And with Duskbloods, I kind of mentioned to everybody that this changes the entire scope of the gaming industry. And I keep listening and explicitly saying that the main reason why I felt from the beginning that after the reveal of that, along with the Switch 2 and its specs and everything else, that the main reason why the internet geeks were getting so hostile, this isn't, well, Nintendo, I'm not worried about that, or whatever with them. Yeah, they finally caught up. We're talking how they tried to sabotage the sales by making it seem as though originally it was that the Switch 2 wasn't any good, it wasn't going to sell, it was just another pet project that wasn't going to go anywhere. And they continued to act as if Nintendo was doing something wrong. And then it was that Nintendo was evil and they were not going to let you own your games, and this, that, and the other thing involving their nefarious practices or whatever. And when the console was launched to the most extraordinarily explosive opening day sales, it was, well, the numbers don't mean anything, and the hardware is not that good. And we even had a whole back and forth with a smaller channel, Doc Trey. I'm going to mention his name, which I don't do for bigger channels. Is that a snot or is that spit? I don't know which one it is. Very classy on my part, by the way. Between him and Digital Foundry, who insisted that the Switch 2, at least when it was portable, had a bad screen, or it wasn't really any good technologically. Everybody was trying to make it seem as if Nintendo used parts from a junkyard to make these consoles. They were going nuts and over-bloating every little thing and utilizing what they could about the hardware. And when the console was still selling, they try to make it seem as though, well, no one's buying the games. And when that was proven wrong, they try to make it seem as though Nintendo was just really, really wicked. And Super Mario or Mario Kart World was this terrible excuse of a game that's just trying to shill you money, and they're just taking everybody's this. They're thieves and they're this, then they're greedy and whatever. And when the console kept selling and breaking records, and console and gaming sales were just blowing it up, what was the last bastion for these geeks that knew that their attempts weren't gaining them any ground or yielding them any fruit? To get angry and pout, because that's what rich kids do when they don't get their way. So now, and I want to be clear about this, Duskbloods is not going to be a console seller. It is going to completely change the course of current gaming, because it's not just a From Software exclusive. It's a From Software exclusive you're probably never going to get on PC. This isn't Atlas and Sega saying, hey, can we make a game for you? This is Nintendo bought the rights. This is Nintendo's game. So there are going to be people who are PC only, but they're so dedicated to From Software that even if they want to kill it, they're going to have to get a Switch 2 to get this game. Vite Vida, I keep mentioning, who has made an entire channel, one of the few, if not many, that is dedicated every last bit of his efforts on this forum to giving you lore based on From Software games, which does that obscurely. He and his constituents are going to have to buy this console now. Like everybody that's involved in From Software, they're going to have to buy this console because this is the only place they're going to get it. And it makes the internet geeks so angry because they are completely obsessed with the idea that they are better than other human beings, specifically because they spend way too much money on playing shitty-ass video games. Now, look, when it comes to PC or PlayStation, especially players, your whole attempt to be bigger than what you are and to make video games bigger than what they need to be, more than entertainment, but art. Your attempt to keep that interactive visual media crap going with your movie games that have no challenge, no interest, no color, nothing's nice to look at, nothing's appealing. It's just rich, pretentious assholes telling their personal stories that nobody cares about. That's not art, not by any stretch of the imagination. And playing a game is not art. Not to mention the fact that for the most part, the artist and what they create, neither of which these typically get appreciated during their time while they're on this planet, usually after they're dead. I know that there's a lot of best-selling authors that people believe are artists, but they're not artists either because their number one goal is to make money. That's what it comes down to. And they love telling stories about themselves. Stories about yourself typically don't move culture or society in any way, shape, or form, especially when the only thing you could say is, well, I'm a drunk and I'm a drug addict. It's like, I guess you have to be a drunk or a drug addict to relate to that. And if it's all about relating to each other, which art is not, relating to the concept, yes. Like I said, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 storyline, anyone can relate to that concept. Whether you want to make it political or you want to make it medicinal, whatever it is, everybody can relate to an idea of an elite class that feeds off the life force of the poor young individuals that are supposed to be represented by them and led by them when all they want is war so they can live forever. That could be relatable to anybody. But when it comes to the movie games, your Sony exclusives, your Hideo Kojima shit, your Konami's attempts at making another Silent Hill game or re-releasing the old ones to remind you how bad those games are, all that, as they said in a very entertaining and enjoyable game, Darkest Dungeon 2, let it die. Nintendo can't root this shit out fast enough because you can't in one breath complain about how the gaming industry on your front, PC, Sony, Xbox, how it's dying, while Nintendo is blowing everybody out with sales. While Nintendo is getting people on board. You want new games, right? New IPs. The Duskbloods is a new IP. It's a brand new series. It's like another Elden Ring. Fresh, different. And the people that are working on this game, they've been working on it since 2019, since before, what was it? The release of, well, during the time that they were making Sekiro, even started before they were putting together Sekiro. Originally, they wanted to put it on the Switch 1, but then they realized, no, we got to do something bigger. Because again, Nintendo did tell certain companies about the Switch 2 years before the Switch 2 came out. These things don't just happen in a vacuum. They don't happen overnight. You get development kits. You let people know we're going to be producing this console so that they can get their games in a specific setting and timing period and whatever. Because Nintendo does want to come out guns blazing, fists flying. And I'm not sure specifically. I know that, of course, you're going to compete with other companies of your same business. But at the same time, Nintendo doesn't openly engage in conflict with these other companies. They typically do it with Nintendo. But what Nintendo and every other company that makes consoles, what they want everybody to realize is that all the fans, anyway, we've got a lot of stuff happening, and it's going to happen every single month, every half, quarter, whatever. We're going to have things for you that you're going to want to buy this console for. Now, Sony and Microsoft never really do that because they only rely on third party, but Nintendo always did. So they want people to know that they got the big boys that even PC gamers, the master race, could approve of, respect. They got them ready. They're going to be a part of this. And when you have a From Software exclusive, what you're saying to everybody is your favorite so-called little dog or little train that could, little engine that could, they're playing for us now too, exclusively. No PC release. So in order for Duskbloods to really make some moolah, everyone's going to have to buy a Switch 2. So knowing that Nintendo is paying for this, I am wrong. They will not cross-platform this to PC. You're going to have to get a Switch 2. So many of these little kids on Twitter and whatever were getting all pissed off saying, oh, it's the loyal servant. Thank you, sir. Thank you for jumping on here, sir, madam. What's going on? How are you? Welcome. Happy Friday. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. If you celebrate that. I did yesterday. I know there's a Thanksgiving in Canada. It's just not yesterday. But that's the whole thing, is that when it comes to a From Software game, that's big time. And when it comes to Miyazaki, that's even bigger. So you're going to have to get this console. It's just that simple. And they don't like it, and they're calling it Shintendo, and why you're wasting your resource and everything. Dude, Switch 2 is the biggest console right now. It's not even close. It's going to be the biggest console. Probably it'll take Switch 1's place. Who knows? There are people that have been waiting for certain games like this. I am not so much a From Software type or a Souls-like type. I had a little bit more tolerance for that years ago, so I would play it. But I like my From Software games. I've played all of them except the ones that were released exclusively on PlayStation, PC, and whatever after Dark Souls 3. So I played Bloodborne a shit ton of times, Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. I never played Demon Souls. I'm probably not going to be able to play Demon Souls. I've never played Sekiro. I'm going to play Elden Ring when it comes out on the Switch 2, whenever that'll be, we don't know. And obviously, I'm going to be playing the Duskbloods because that was one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure I got my Switch 2 immediately so I can be prepared for all these releases. So yeah, definitely, I'm not a fan, but I do appreciate the majority of it. I don't like when you have to hit a boss 85 times when they only have to fart on you and you're dead. And I don't like when you're trying to get your progress back in runes or souls or blood echoes, and getting killed along the way. It just destroys any chance you can of getting those and you lose progress. That drives me nuts. But having seen Elden Ring 1,000 times, either being played straight up, all right, go help those old farts and their plumbing problems over here. That's what those fire department's there for now. But when I've seen people play through the game, either in speed runs or in its entirety, what I've noticed is there is a lot to do and there are a lot of enemies you can just grind out on. So that should be interesting. Now, one of the reasons why Dark Souls 2 was so easy was because of the fact that you had the, what do they call, the Fire Link bonfire aesthetics. And the bonfire aesthetics would give you the ability to fight easy bosses. Pretty much all the bosses in that game were easy. And it gave you the ability to fight them at a higher level so you can get more souls on the defeat. And you can get the old Great One souls, which gave you even more souls, and their enhanced souls, which gave you even more souls. So you more or less could just get like 300, 400,000 souls defeating them like the Rotten, or Il Putrido, as they said in Italian, or the old Ivory King, or the old Iron King, I'm sorry. And you would fight them 5, 6 times like I would, higher level, get all those. You'd have millions of souls by the end of the first like few hours. And you'd be at level 260 before you even got to the DLC. So even Nashandra's sister in the Rotten King or whatever it was called, even her fight with her summons and whatever didn't do anything to you. So that's one of the reasons why Dark Souls 2 is the easiest one out of all of them. And I'm pretty sure Elden Ring will bite me in the ass a bunch of times, but the concept that I can fight a bunch of lumbering zombie-like shambling corpses and armor and everything like that, fight all these mini bosses running around and everything. I'm pretty sure it'll help me level up a great deal so that I can make not it trivial or even somewhat easier, but less intolerable. But Duskbloods is really interesting, and they're very proud of the work they're doing in From Software with this title. And this is really pissing off the internet geeks. And you know what? I love it. I love it. Get mad. You know why? Because sooner or later, you're going to have to eat it. You're going to have to get a Switch 2. And then you're going to realize when it comes to my gaming experience, I didn't realize how badly I needed a Nintendo console. Nintendo is the best gaming company. They have the best consoles. It's just that simple. If you like video games, if you want to watch a movie that holds your hand to the next cutscene, you may not like Nintendo games. But hey, good news for all of you. Most of those games are coming out on the Switch 2 as well. So there you go. You can have the walking simulators thinking they're movies, and you can have the real video games. So it was really interesting when I first decided to talk about this the day after Thanksgiving to hear now that Nintendo is either buying out or has bought out Bandai Namco. And that also makes sense because Bandai Namco made quite the name for themselves. Oh, I got to charge this up. So that means this is going to be over quicker than I realized. Bandai Namco has made a lot of money for themselves because of Nintendo, like Capcom. Now, is Nintendo going to buy a Capcom? No, that's not going to happen. But when Capcom announces Street Fighter 7, and they will one of these years, it's going to be on the Switch 2 day one. They are totally committed to putting everything on the Switch. They were committed to putting everything on the Switch 1. And Capcom's got some good games. All right, this thing is going out. So anyway, folks, that's what I had to say for today. Next week is going to be the day after Metroid Prime 4 Beyond comes out. Whether or not I was really killing myself waiting for some of the other titles that have been announced and released, this one. Now, like I said, I'm old. Nothing impresses me. I don't care about anything. I don't look forward to anything anymore other than looking at women undress themselves. But this game, this title, is what I've been waiting for about 10 years. So I'm going to start talking about it next week. When I return on this wonderful stream, you're going to see me do my preliminary review on Thursday of next week. And man, I'm telling you, I'm looking forward to this shit. So I'm looking forward to this. A little bit of Duskbloods. Loving the fact that I have paid in full the generational pack of Resident Evil and Requiem's coming out. in February. This is going to be great. I'm even going to get Fallout 4. Okay. I'm even going to get Fallout 4 for all of you. So I will see you all next time. Have a great weekend until next Friday.